Welcome to the Career Transition Experts, and this episode is a special one for me because one of my favorite guests is returning, Michael Neece, the creator of Interview Mastery, which is something we share with all our clients and which is something he has made available to recruiters to make sure that the executive level leaders are prepared really very effectively for their interviews. Welcome to the program, Michael. Thanks for being with us.
Jonathan, I am thrilled as always to be with you again.
Thanks. Well, let's start with what's the main takeaway we want to make sure people know they'll get if they listen to this entire episode?
You're going to learn specific things that you haven't normally heard of about how to thrive on an interview. And after I share them, you go, "Oh, that makes perfect sense." And so we're gonna reveal some things that people haven't heard before. That's also included in Interview Mastery, which you can get through Jonathan's program. So you're gonna hear some things you haven't heard before, and it'll be especially important for experienced, directors and above. And you'll feel a whole lot more confident when you're done listening to this program.
Excellent. Okay, great. All right, well, let's get right into it then. So the first question I have, what are the most important things candidates should be thinking about to make sure that they present themselves as unique?
Yes. Well, first, be careful what you assume. I find that most people assume that, hey, I'm good at my job and I'm reasonably fluent in talking, then I'm all set. The interview will go great. Or I've been an interviewer of hundreds of people. I know how to do this. I'm going to be great. And then when they get in the interview, it doesn't go quite well, or maybe they come in second or third place, and they realize that being a candidate for a position is fundamentally unique throughout your career. And it's the most financially impactful moment that determines your career advancement. People will spend thousands of dollars, maybe hundreds and hundreds of dollars on getting their resume ready. But if you don't have exceptional interview skills, your job search is going to be really long and hard.
Yeah. I've heard it say you could be really, really great at what you do professionally. But if you're not great at the job interview process, your career is determined by that. And I say that with compassion because I know a lot of people, struggle with that. They get, like you said, surprised that what they thought would be easy, something everyone just does, can sometimes drag on second place, third place. There's no bronze or silver medal for that.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
So gold medal. So being the one is our logo and our brand promise. How would you suggest some of the things that people prepare, like when they're preparing for an interview? What are some things they should think about, do differently? How do they prepare in a way that's have them stand out?
Okay. You probably have a job description. First thing you can do is you can predict exactly what they're going to ask you and practice your responses to those questions. Rather than go to ChatGPT, just go to Google Bart. All right. It's kind of the same thing, but a broader database. And you can say, write interview questions for the following. What you'll get is a list of specific questions related to each element of the job description. And so you'll now have a list of, I know what they're going to ask me. So then you can start crafting your answers in advance. Next thing you do is
really,
you take
the first thing is really know what kinds of questions to expect. Be prepared. Like that's the best way to prepare is think about the job description, look at the job description, run it through a ChatGPT or Google Bark and look at these questions, practicing your answers. So
yes.
Okay, got it.
And here's how to practice. Make a list of 5 or 6 questions. And you start with, take 3 or 4 of the questions that were generated for you, whether ChatGPT or Google Bart. And then the first question is, can you just summarize your background for us? And then the final question will be, do you have any questions? Okay. And then, so in between the first question and the last question, add 3 or 4 questions. Just write them down on a piece of paper. Call a professional colleague, friendly of yours, and meet for coffee. Say, I need to practice this interview. Let me buy you a cup of coffee. And all you do is you ask them to interview you, but you say, here's the question I want you to ask me. All you have to do is listen and now ask the question and then listen to my response and then tell me how I'm doing.
Okay.
So you can do a mock interview at a moment's notice.
Very good. Okay. So, but really doing a mock and practice interview is the best way to interview. Most people would sequester themselves and do it alone. Some people might do it in the mirror, which some experts have recommended is a challenging exercise because, you know, how many conversations do we have in the mirror that go very well?
Yes.
So, actually meeting someone to do a practice interview makes perfect sense. Great. Okay.
Yes. Okay. Third thing I promised you. You're going to be interviewed over Zoom or some kind of video thing. And you know what the questions are going to ask you. You can create an outline of what your response is for each one of those questions and then stick it on the wall right behind your video camera on either side. So if you put okay, so watch where my eyes go. If I'm looking down at my answer, my little cheat sheet right here, clearly I'm reading something. But if I'm looking, like if I take a piece of paper and I put it behind the video camera on the wall, either on this side or on this side, it looks like I'm kind of looking at you.
Yeah. And being this is a podcast, people can't see that. But as I'm interviewing you on Zoom, I can see that. You're giving me the experience of eye contact, which is proven to create connection and even increase the listener's self-esteem. So it's a very important thing to show people the whites of your eyes and the warmth of your smile.
Yes. Fourth thing.
Okay.
Now, if eye contact, you just reminded me of eye contact. Right now, I'm making sure I'm talking to the lens of the camera. Now I'm looking at you, Jonathan. I'm actually looking at your image. It doesn't look like I'm doing any eye contact at all.
Right.
But I think I am.
You might be looking at my eyes in a little square below the camera, but for the viewer, so that took me, listen, I went through the Skype era, not figuring out how to do that comfortably, and then made sure to get good at that when Zoom came along.
Yes.
And it takes practice.
Very important. It takes practice. It takes practice.
Yeah. To look at that little dot of glass as the person's, that's the person's eyes.
Yeah. And that's exactly what it is. I'm looking at the little light on the camera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Good tip for Zoom meetings and Zoom interviews. How to answer and tackle the salary question when people say, what are you looking for financially?
Yes. Now, on a screening interview, oftentimes it's the internal recruiter at a corporation or HR generalist. And the only question they want to ask you is your salary expectations. Besides all of the other smoke questions, they really want to know what your salary expectations are. The first person to give a number loses. So if they ask you what your salary expectations are, say to them, what's the salary range? And, there's lots of other things you could say, but that one works really over 90-95% of the time.
Really?
Now,
as devil's advocate, may I say, now some people might think that not answering that question would be off-putting or deflective. Like, wouldn't it seem, and I'm asking this to have you help make our listeners comfortable with the idea of not answering that question with a number or a range, but instead saying, well, could you please tell me what the salary range is for the job? That's what you're suggesting.
Yeah,
and that's
works what I'm checking.
99% of the time?
That works. So first, there's an interview mastery, which is in Jonathan's program and my program. There's a whole module on answering this question. And the first response is, well, when I consider changing positions, I evaluate 5 things. It's quality of the job, quality of the team, quality of the growth opportunity, and salary. It's like the 4th thing on my list. Oh, and location. So obviously gonna um, we're gonna have a conversation. So you assess whether I'm, the right person for the job. All I'd like you to do is make me the best offer that you feel comfortable with. Now they're going to do that anyway, but you can just short circuit all that and just say, I'm kind of open and flexible. My salary is in line with the market, but what's the salary range that you've set?
Nice.
So I ask people that question when I'm recruiting. I ask everybody that question. And about half of them ask me what the range is. And I feel compelled to answer the question like, well, okay, the range is this. Because all they really care about is that your salary expectations are within their range somehow. It could be at the top of the range, but it's something that they can feel like they can offer if they love you. Now, the other thing to mention is that more and more states in the United States are requiring that employers post the salary when they post the job. So you're more empowered there. And also you could go to salary.com or payscale.com and you can look up the salary range in your particular location for a specific job title.
So, yeah, very good. Okay. Yeah. So in sum, best bet is to simply just ask, what is the salary range? And then they say it, your response will be, okay, well, we're fine. I would work with anything within that range. And in worst case scenario, do some research and say, I've done some research. What I'm looking for was within the range of this kind of profession. Yeah. And you can keep it open until you get further along, right? Because the idea is get through the screener who just needs to make sure you're in the range, get further along so they fall in love with you. And then when you get down to negotiation, you get down to what you actually get. Okay, perfect.
Yep. Yeah.
All right, let's talk for a minute about candidates working with recruiters. You've been an executive search professional and recruiter. You've worked a lot with recruiters with your interview mastery program. What are some things that people really need to keep in mind when they're interacting with recruiters? What are some real important do's and don'ts to keep the relationship with a recruiter high energy?
First, the recruiter, it's not their job to find you a job. You're not paying them. They're getting paid by the employer. So their first and only allegiance is to the employer. That's who's paying them. Second of all, every interaction, you want to add value to that relationship. That's how you establish greater rapport. What does a recruiter care about? They care about getting help finding talented candidates for specific jobs. The only reason they're talking to you is because you're a square peg and you fit square hole that they're trying to fill. Also, you can offer to fine tune your resume for the specific position. You just don't want to ask the recruiter to do more work than they have to.
Okay, great.
All they really want to do is find a great candidate like you and present it and start getting you an interview.
Okay, great. Awesome. All right. Well, listen, there's already lots of really great insights you've shared with us. Is there one more for the road that you'd like to share as we begin to wrap up?
All right. Let's say they make you an offer and it's a little low.
Okay.
You don't want to take it, but you do want to take the offer, but you want a little bit more money.
Okay.
What you say to them, so when the HR person delivers you the offer, you take a deep breath. And I mean this, I have used this. This is how I learned it. I did it by accident. Say, I'm really excited to join your company. My salary expectations were a little bit higher. And if you can go up to this number, I'll take it and I'll start in 2 weeks. And the reason you do that is because you're basically asking them to go through, do a little bit more homework, get another round of signature authorizations internally for a higher job offer. But you've also told them you're going to accept it if they hit that number.
And when you're starting, I like that piece.
And exactly when you're starting.
You know exactly what to expect. Great tip.
Now, they might say, oh, what you're asking for is above the range. You can say, okay, I understand that. There's other ways we can do this. And the simplest way is just offer me a one-time sign-on bonus. And then again, I'll start in 2 weeks. I'll start on September 25th.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you see that works.
That works. I was helping one of our clients, and I often do some of the more technical recruiting for technical positions and senior executives. Mm-hmm. And a candidate did exactly that. They made him an offer, and he very professionally said, I love this opportunity. I can't wait to get started. I was looking for a higher base. If you offer me the base that you offered me plus a sign-on bonus, I'll take it and I'll start, on this date. Alternatively, if you increase the base to something that I was looking for, I'll also take it. So he offered two options.
Right.
But again, he always closed the deal by saying, I will take this.
Yeah, it really does accelerate the confidence for the employer. Really great. One last thing. What is the dumbest thing you've seen smart people do in the job search process?
This one jumped right out at me in preparing for this podcast. Very smart engineer. He was a really smart engineer. He was, it was years ago. It happened like 10 years ago, and he was a software engineer. And the interviewer, who was the director of engineering, said, well, John, what do you think is really your greatest strength, like your superpower? And he looked back at him and said, well, I'm a crackerjack speller. No kidding. I can't make this up. So that's the wrong way. And he was a crackerjack speller is the point. He was a really good speller.
Okay.
However, it's not appropriate.
Right.
You want to identify one of your strengths or two of your strengths that are completely aligned with the skill set that they're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah.
And be ready to tell a story of your experience on a project that demonstrates that strength.
Right. Very good. All right. A couple of personal notes. Favorite music you're listening to these days? Favorite artist?
Band? Yes. It's one of the most famous artists that nobody in America has ever heard of. And he died just a few days ago. His name is Rodriguez.
Got that.
And in South Africa, he was, if you take the popularity of Elvis Presley and the Beatles, this guy was much bigger than that.
Wow. Amazing. Yep. All right, we'll look that up.
Never heard of him. But
I know you do a lot of things to make a difference on the planet. Very interesting is here an update on the 26.2 Foundation.
Yeah, the 26.2 Foundation is all about sponsoring programs that improve health, education, and international business development. That's all around health and education, like improving literacy, creating programs that help get people moving to reduce obesity. But our flagship project is a $35 million international marathon center that we are going to start building pretty soon, as soon as we finish raising a substantial amount of that money. But it'll be, it's going to be a magnificent place to advance marathoning, running sports in general, health and wellness, and there'll be a lot of, anyway, I could go on and on. I've been involved in that about 20 years.
I love that you center sort of a very focused target audience, the world of marathon runners, to this important cause of literacy and education. Just spoke to someone today who's on his way to Montreal tomorrow to run a marathon in Montreal. Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, Michael, thank you so much for being a guest on our program and for your insights and your wisdom and your enthusiasm. You're a great trainer at heart, and I really appreciate you.
All right. It's a pleasure.